The rain slid down the glass walls of the private hospital like slow tears, turning the city outside into a blur of silver and shadow. Inside, everything was quiet in that expensive, controlled way. Soft footsteps, muted voices, machines humming gently like they were afraid to disturb the people who mattered most. Victor Harrington sat alone on a leather chair in the corridor, his tailored coat still on, his tie loosened but not removed, as if he were refusing to fully surrender to the moment. He was a man used to control, to decisions that moved markets and ruined competitors, yet now his hands trembled slightly as they rested on his knees. His eyes never left the closed door at the end of the hallway. Behind it lay his daughter, Emily, and the weight of that reality pressed on his chest harder than any loss he had ever known. Emily had been everything bright in Victor's life. 17 years old, sharp-witted, stubborn, endlessly curious. She had laughed loudly, argued fearlessly, and dreamed recklessly. Before the accident, she had been unstoppable. Then one night, a stretch of wet road, a driver who never saw the red light, the sound of metal folding in on itself. Victor still heard that sound in his sleep. The doctors had spoken carefully, choosing words that sounded gentle but cut deep all the same. Spinal damage. Severe. Permanent. The word paralyzed had echoed in his head ever since, refusing to fade that he had done what he always did when faced with a problem. Thrown money at it. The best surgeons, the most advanced treatments, private consultations that required entire teams to be flown across oceans. He had nodded through explanations filled with medical terms, clung to phrases like experimental and possible improvement, and ignored the looks that said the truth before the words ever came. Nothing changed. Emily's legs remained still. Every day, Victor watched hope slip further away, and for the first time in his life, he felt powerless. A soft shuffle broke his thoughts. Victor looked up, irritation already forming, expecting a nurse or an assistant with another update he didn't want to hear. Instead, he saw a boy standing a few steps away. The child was thin, his clothes worn and slightly too big, as if they had once belonged to someone else. His hair was damp, likely from the rain outside, and his shoes didn't match. He looked out of place in the pristine hallway, like a shadow that had wandered into the wrong world. "Sir." "Excuse me, sir," the boy said. Victor frowned. A security guard at the far end of the corridor noticed them and began to move closer. Victor was about to wave the boy away when the child spoke again, his voice quiet but steady. "I can make your daughter walk again." The words hit the air and shattered it. Victor stared at the boy, unsure if he had heard correctly. Then anger flared, sharp and sudden, burning through his exhaustion. "That's enough," Victor said coldly, standing up. "This isn't a place for jokes." "I'm not joking," the boy replied. The guard stepped closer. "Sir, I'll take care of this." Victor nodded sharply. "Do it." But the boy didn't run. He didn't beg. He simply stood there, meeting Victor's gaze without fear. That, more than the words themselves, made Victor pause. "You think you're the first to say something like that?" Victor snapped. "I've had doctors promise miracles, people claiming divine powers, liars who wanted my money, my attention, my grief. You think I'll believe a beggar child?" "I don't want your money," the boy said softly. "I just want you to let me try." Victor laughed once, bitter and hollow. "Try what? Magic? Prayer? A trick?" The boy hesitated, then said, "I don't know how to explain it. I just know what I can do." Victor felt something twist in his chest. Not hope, but irritation mixed with a dangerous curiosity. He had learned long ago not to believe in things he couldn't control. And yet, something about the boy's calm unsettled him. Before he could respond, the door at the end of the corridor opened. A nurse stepped out, her expression gentle. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "your daughter is awake. She's asking for you." Victor's breath caught. He looked from the nurse back to the boy. "If this is some kind of cruel act," he said quietly, "I won't forgive it." The boy nodded once. "I understand." Against logic, against experience, against every instinct that had made him successful, Victor gestured toward the room. 5 minutes, he said. That's all. Inside, Emily lay propped up on white pillows, her face pale but her eyes alert. She noticed the boy immediately and raised an eyebrow. Dad, she said. Who's that? Victor hesitated, then answered honestly. He says he can help you. Emily studied the boy with curiosity rather than disbelief. What's your name? Leo, the boy replied. How do you know my dad? She asked. I don't, Leo said. I just saw him. Emily smiled faintly. Well, that's honest. Victor watched them, his heart pounding, torn between fear of disappointment and a hope he refused to name. He didn't know it yet, but in that moment, standing between wealth and wonder, logic and faith, his life had already begun to change. The room seemed smaller once the door closed, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to witness what was about to happen. Machines hummed softly beside Emily's bed, their steady rhythms a reminder of everything science had already tried and failed to fix. Victor stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the boy with a skepticism so deeply ingrained it felt like armor. Leo stood quietly at the foot of the bed, hands clasped in front of him, his gaze fixed not on Victor but on Emily, as though she were the only person in the room who truly mattered. Emily, for her part, was studying Leo with a mixture of curiosity and something gentler. Hope, perhaps, or the faint desire to believe in a miracle even when the world had taught her not to. So, Emily said lightly, breaking the tension, you think you can make me walk again? Leo nodded, not dramatically, not confidently, but as if answering a simple question. I think I can help, he said. Victor let out a short, humorless breath. We've heard that before. Leo glanced at him, then back to Emily. I know. I'm not asking you to believe me. Just let me try. Emily looked at her father. She had seen that expression on his face too many times. Controlled, guarded, afraid of hoping. Dad, she said gently, what's the worst that can happen? Victor opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. The worst had already happened. Hadn't it? He nodded once, reluctantly. All right, he said. But if you feel uncomfortable at any point, we stop. Emily smiled. Deal. Leo stepped closer to the bed. He didn't touch Emily at first. Instead, he closed his eyes and took a slow, steady breath, as if he were listening to something no one else could hear. Victor watched closely, ready to intervene at the first sign of nonsense. He had no patience left for illusions. Yet something about the boy's stillness made the room feel different, quieter, heavier, as though the air itself had thickened. What are you doing? Victor asked. Focusing, Leo replied softly, without opening his eyes. Emily's fingers curled nervously into the blanket. Okay, she said. I'm ready. Leo lifted his hand and held it just above Emily's knee, not quite touching. His face tightened slightly, concentration drawing a faint line between his brows. Seconds passed, then more. Victor was about to speak when Emily gasped sharply. Dad, she whispered. Victor rushed to her side. What is it? It's strange, Emily said, eyes wide. It feels warm, like someone put a heating pad on my legs. Victor froze. He searched her face for signs of imagination, of desperation masquerading as sensation. Are you sure? He asked carefully. She nodded. I haven't felt anything there in months. Not like this. Leo opened his eyes, sweat forming along his hairline. Try to move your toes, he said gently. Emily laughed nervously. You make it sound so easy. Just try, Leo said. She focused, her jaw tightening, her breathing uneven. Victor held his breath, watching her feet as though his stare alone could will them into motion. Nothing happened. The moment stretched, heavy and cruel, and Victor felt foolish for allowing himself to hope even a little. Then Emily inhaled sharply. Wait, she said. I think. Her toe twitched, just barely, but enough. Victor's heart slammed against his ribs. Emily, he whispered. Did you see that? I felt it, she said, tears spilling over. I actually felt it. Victor dropped to his knees beside the bed, his hands gripping the rail so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Do it again," he pleaded. "Please." Emily tried again. This time, the movement was clearer. Small, weak, but undeniably real. A sound escaped Victor's throat that was half sob, half laugh. He covered his face, years of control collapsing in an instant. Doctors rushed in moments later, alerted by the monitor readings that showed unexpected activity. Questions flew. Tests were ordered. Leo was gently moved aside as professionals took over, their disbelief barely hidden behind clinical calm. Victor stood frozen, watching the chaos unfold, his eyes never leaving his daughter. Hours later, after scans and examinations and whispered conversations in the hallway, a senior neurologist approached Victor. "There is activity we cannot explain," he said carefully. "It's early and we must be cautious. But this is not something we usually see." Victor nodded slowly. For once, he didn't ask for guarantees. He didn't demand timelines or percentages. He simply looked at Leo, who sat quietly on a chair near the wall, exhausted but calm. That night, Victor invited Leo to his private office in the hospital. Food was laid out on the table, untouched at first. Clean clothes were offered. Leo accepted them politely but without excitement, as though such things meant very little to him. "Tell me how you did it," Victor said. Leo shook his head. "I don't really know. My mother used to say some people are born with strange gifts. She said mine was meant to help others." "Where is your mother now?" Victor asked. "She died," Leo said simply. "She worked here cleaning floors. When she got sick, no one helped." The words struck Victor harder than any accusation. He thought of the hospital staff who barely noticed the people who cleaned after hours, the invisible lives that kept his world pristine. "You saved my daughter," Victor said quietly. "You can have anything you want." Leo met his eyes. "I don't want anything," he said. "Just let me keep helping her. And maybe other people too." Victor leaned back, overwhelmed by a feeling he didn't recognize. Humility. In that moment, he realized something had shifted inside him. Not just Emily's condition, but his understanding of the world. And he knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that this was only the beginning. Morning light poured through the tall hospital windows in soft gold waves, illuminating a scene Victor Harrington had once believed he would never witness again. Emily stood between two parallel bars in the rehabilitation room, her hands gripping the cool metal as if it were the edge of a cliff. Her legs trembled beneath her, muscles weak and uncertain, but they were alive. That single truth filled the room with a quiet magic that no machine or medicine had ever managed to create. Victor stood a few steps away, afraid to move, afraid that even breathing too loudly might shatter the fragile moment unfolding before him. Leo stood close to Emily, his presence calm and grounding. He did not touch her unless she asked. He did not command or instruct with authority. Instead, he spoke softly, encouraging her as if reminding her of something she already knew deep inside herself. "Slowly," he said, "your body remembers more than you think." Emily took a breath and shifted her weight. One foot slid forward, unsteady but deliberate. The room seemed to hold its breath with her. When she placed her foot down, a laugh burst from her lips, half disbelief, half pure joy. Victor felt his vision blur. He had faced hostile boardrooms and ruthless enemies without fear, but this moment left him defenseless. His daughter was standing, truly standing. Days turned into weeks, and the impossible slowly became reality. Emily learned to balance, then to take steps without the bars, then to walk short distances on her own. Each victory was small and monumental all at once. Doctors documented everything, their skepticism slowly giving way to wonder. Some called it an anomaly. Others whispered about miracles. Victor stopped caring about labels. All that mattered was the sound of Emily's footsteps echoing through the halls, a sound he had thought lost forever. The media descended like a storm. Headlines speculated wildly, cameras flashing, reporters desperate for answers. Victor refused them all. He protected Leo fiercely, ensuring the boy remained out of reach of those who would turn him into a spectacle or a product. He had spent his life exploiting opportunities, but this time he chose restraint. Leo was not a commodity. He was a child who had changed everything. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the city in shades of amber and rose, Victor found Emily sitting on a bench in the hospital garden. Leo stood nearby, watching koi fish glide through a small pond. Emily looked up as her father approached, her smile easy and unburdened in a way he hadn't seen since before the accident. "He doesn't just help me walk," Emily said quietly, following Victor's gaze to Leo. "He helps me believe again." Victor sat beside her, the stone bench cool beneath his hands. "He's done the same for me," he admitted. The words felt strange but right. "I built my life on numbers, contracts, power. I thought those things could fix anything." Emily leaned her head against his shoulder. "Turns out they can't fix hearts." Victor nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. For the first time, he allowed himself to see the world beyond his own walls of privilege. He saw the nurses who worked double shifts, the janitors who cleaned silently after midnight, the children in the waiting rooms whose parents couldn't afford miracles. He saw the boy who had come from nothing and asked for nothing, yet gave more than anyone ever had within months. Emily walked unassisted through the hospital lobby, her step steady, her posture strong. Applause broke out spontaneously from staff and patients alike. Victor stood beside Leo, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder as cameras captured the moment he had once tried to hide from the world. Later that day, Victor announced the creation of a new medical center. It would focus on rehabilitation, research, and care for those who had been turned away elsewhere. Treatment would be free for those who couldn't pay. No one would be denied help because of their status or wealth. When reporters asked why, Victor answered simply, "Because miracles shouldn't belong only to the rich." Leo listened quietly as the announcement echoed across the room. "You don't have to do all this," he said later. "I know," Victor replied, "but I need to." Life did not become perfect. Emily still struggled. Some days were painful, exhausting, frustrating. But she walked, she laughed, she lived fully again. Leo remained by her side, not as a savior, but as a friend. He began helping other patients too, always under careful supervision, always with the same humility. One afternoon, as they walked together beneath open skies for the first time since the accident, Emily turned to Leo. "You changed our lives," she said. Leo shook his head. "You changed your own. I just reminded you how." Victor watched them from a distance, his heart full in a way success had never given him. He understood now that true power was not measured in wealth or influence, but in compassion, in courage, and in the willingness to believe in others. The boy who had once stood barefoot in a hospital corridor had given him the greatest lesson of his life. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the strongest truths. Sometimes hope arrives without warning, wearing worn shoes and asking for nothing in return. And sometimes, all it takes to change the world is the courage to say, "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again," and the faith to listen.